out and talk to anybody that you might have exposed yourself inadvertently during that time. So Germany is following the science, they're following the numbers, and they're opening up very, very slowly and getting people
So
back
Melinda
to
Gates,
work.
she just
And
talked
that
about
is
being
the system that I
quarantined
think
before I
would
got
work
the video on.
perfectly in the United States. And what I see when I go out yesterday on Mother's Day in the parks in Seattle, where we've been in this lockdown phase for a long time with now a very slow reopening in Seattle, the American citizens are doing the right thing. They are social distancing, they're wearing masks. I'm hearing from teenagers who wash their hands. So we need to lead as a nation in a thoughtful and slow process that follows the numbers and sees where we are day by day by day. That would make sense.
Who is she anyway?
I mean, we were slow to do
She's
it.
the wife of the
What do you think?
Microsoft
The
guy.
experts
That's
are
all.
warning us that a second
Gotta
wave
be
is
kidding me.
inevitable. Are we doing enough from your view to prepare for
She's
that?
asking second wave inevitable.
No, I mean, until we get tests out at scale, until
Not
we
doing
go
enough.
slowly with reopening, until we make sure we're taking care of our employees, we're taking care of them as parents who are balancing a lot with caregiving at home. Until we do that, we're not even doing enough in today's crisis, much less preparing for what may come yet this fall. And so I get concerned when I read in the news about places that are opening too quickly and people feel like it's safe to go into places where there are multiple people who aren't social distancing. I look and say, my gosh, there's almost no chance that state won't have a resurgence even just in the next month. That's concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. What about China? How do you think the Chinese have handled this from the beginning?
Well, I don't have all the data on China. I certainly follow the numbers. I follow the stories, right? I think, once they understood what this disease was and how much it was spreading, I think then they did do the right things. I don't know everything that happened before that. I don't live in China. I don't live in Wuhan or Hubei province. But I do think once they knew what they had on their hands, they flew thousands and thousands of healthcare workers into Hubei province. They made sure people quarantined, even away from their families, because they started to see it was spreading amongst families. So they have a very different system than we do. So they took a different approach. I'm not saying that's the right approach for the United States.
Yes, you are.
But I
Don't
think we
lie.
have to look at what did they do? What can we look at and say it's replicable? I mean, we're seeing people go back to work slowly in Beijing. Businesses are learning who have offices in Beijing, how they might reopen in the United States. And so I think we have to look at what is the business environment there? What are people doing that seems right for their employees in their businesses? And then we have to look at democratic models that are more like ours, like a Germany. And I think if you take the best of both of those, we will do the right thing by our American citizens.
What do you think will permanently change as a result of this pandemic?
I think so much is going to change. I think it's hard to predict.
I think
people are going to be a little more grateful for being able to see one another and have physical contact with their friends. I think some of our businesses will change permanently in terms of how we think about work. I think we're learning you can be far more flexible about work. You don't have to be in your seat at your desk 8 hours a day in a building. So work may become more flexible over time, some hours in office, some out. I think online schooling, I think that's going to change as well. I think there will always be classroom time. I think there should be classroom time. But I think we're learning very rapidly what online models can actually work for high quality teaching. And then the piece we still have to learn is how do you make sure everybody has access? So I think there will be a balance and people will start to say, hey, how do we imagine teaching happening in the future that would make it far more flexible for students and far more interesting for teachers to teach and to keep it interesting for kids? So I think there are going to be a lot of changes in society, and I don't even think we can predict yet.
Our thanks to Melinda Gates, who also told me, Wilfred, that she and the Gates Foundation have been called on by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to help reimagine New York's school system as we look toward reopening. She said there actually has not been a meeting yet, and there are a number of different organizations involved. But that was sort of why I asked her that question about what would change and why she went into schools there. The other point I wanted to raise on childcare, which was a huge theme that she was pushing, and we had to cut some of it in the interest of time, which is this idea that there isn't really a stimulus bill right now in Washington. The Democrats unveiled their relief proposals. Republicans, don't really have anything on that front, but childcare system in this country, the fact that so many of these daycares already were struggling, are struggling even further, unclear whether they even qualify for some of the government relief bill. It's essential to thinking about how to get people back at work without mothers, which it so often is the case, who have to stay at home with their kids. Another reason why the school opening is such a hot topic for reopening as well. So hopefully she's able to draw some attention to that topic on Capitol Hill.
Absolutely. And I think just more broadly as well, Sarah, the tone, not dissimilar from Dr. Fauci today, that kind of points you to the market. If the market has rallied because it's hopeful of a very quick and smooth return to normal, then the tone there from Mrs. Gates suggests perhaps the market is running it a bit too hot. Clearly, if it's responding to huge stimulus programs and whatever else, then that's not the case. But not a hugely optimistic tone overall there, I think.
Melinda Gates.
Right, and you have to remember where she and the Gates Foundation is coming from. They fund and they work with the doctors and they work with the companies, and they're pouring money into R&D, particularly around vaccines, and then trying to scale them. And so her point on vaccines, 18 months away. Even with the new optimistic data out of companies like Moderna, it's going to take so long to scale it up to hundreds of millions or billions of people. With the reopening, yes, I agree with your point. From where they sit, the health risk is the number one driver here, and it could only set us back if these reopenings go too early. It is a point that Dr. Fauci said today.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, great stuff there. Well done. Now some breaking news on Facebook. Julia Boston's got it for us.